Hi, I'm Jonathan Shaw, host of the Let's Talk About the Built Environment podcast. Today I have with me Stuart Sage of Hive Land Planning, and we'll learn about brownfield sites, regeneration, Chorley, and everything in between. So welcome to the Let's Talk About the Built Environment podcast. We've known each other, bumped into each other at various events for quite a period of time now, and I understand where you're from and you're proud of where you're from, but you tell me, would you please, where you're from, where you grew up, and what drew you to a career in the built environment?
Yeah, well, first of all, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
In this fantastic surrounding.
It is indeed, yeah. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate this. I was born in Blackpool. Believe it or not.
Truly?
No, I was born in Blackpool. But then moved to Chorley when I was about 9. So, as you say, proud Chorley boy. Right. As you know.
No affiliation to Blackpool at all, anymore?
No, not at all. And grew up in Chorley, went to university in Cardiff, lived in the Midlands for about 10 years, and then when my wife and myself had our daughter, she's now 13 next week, or the week after, rather. Get in trouble for that. Moved back up when she was about 1, so moved back to Chorley. So, yeah, in terms of the built environment, always had a keen interest in towns and cities and my surroundings, and sort of did the usual thing. I did geography and design and various other subjects at A level. So I sort of was always leaning in that direction. But I think the key thing for me was I grew up near a village called Astley Village on the edge of Chorley, which I see you nodding, you know the place. And that was part of the development that came forward through the Central Lancashire New Town. And it was designed on sort of New Town principles. And I had loads of mates that lived there. And it was a fascinating place to go to and to see the sort of, I didn't know it at the time, but the key principles of good town planning, which is around good public open space, really, really extensive green infrastructure that sort of worked in tandem with Astley Park, which is a big park next to Astley Village. The mix of housing in terms of both scale and tenure of housing, a community centre and a school and good public transport. So I suppose, and also there was some quite interesting designs of houses as well that were built in the 1980s that were very different to what you'd see elsewhere. So I suppose that sort of sparked my interest in new towns, really.
So is that example of good town planning?
Well, funnily enough, I did my thesis as part of my degree on it as well. And I think the overall view is yes. I think, it did accord with a lot of those core principles that you're looking for in what we now say good placemaking. And I think it really did.
What does placemaking mean to you, and how would you define that?
I think it's one of those phrases that people sort of latch onto because it sounds like, you understand what it means. To me, it's all about good town planning principles, those core principles that drive a sustainable location or make a place a sustainable and an attractive place to be. We all know in our own minds, places that we like, and often those places are old places in town centres or attractive places and locations that have good green infrastructure, good access to public transport, well-designed places and good layouts. And we all also know, unfortunately, quite a lot of other sort of schemes and projects that I'm sure we're all familiar with as seen where I don't think they would embody those core town planning principles.
I'm more familiar with Buckshaw.
Yeah.
So is that a similar thing? Or
Buckshaw was much more recent development and has, I would say, sought to carry on some of those underlying principles about good placemaking. I suppose master planners and designers will be better placed to sort of comment on whether it's worked or not. Certainly it's been a popular and successful development. I suppose the key differences between them is that the new town was a public sector government-led initiative,
right.
Whereas Buckshaw was sort of private landowners and private developers sort of bringing that forward. So that would be the key difference. But certainly Bookshow's been successful from a sales point of view.
Interesting. So was there anything career-wise, part-time jobs, different careers early doors? Were you a plumber, then a town planner, or just always on this route from school?
I was always on the route from school. So I went straight from GCSEs to A-levels and then went straight to university. It was a degree and a diploma in town planning. So it was almost sort of meant to be, really. I mean, I always had part-time jobs sort of to earn some pin money.
Go on, give us an example.
I worked at Charnock Richard Services, washing up. That was a particular highlight. But I had a paper round from an early age and just the usual sort of things to have enough money to go and buy trainers and records and go to gigs and that sort of thing.
It's always interesting, the people you meet and work with in those part-time gigs, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to tell you some stories, but it's probably not suitable for a podcast at this stage. But no, it was it was great, and I think that I really enjoyed it. I think it's really important and for young people to get out and work, no matter what the job is, and understand the importance of sort of the disciplines of work, if you will.
Building relationships,
absolutely.
Different levels of people dealing with public. Yeah, absolutely. So you're a chartered town planner, is that's correct? So I'm guessing, is that a degree, relevant degree, apprenticeship type application, sitting interviews? What's the process?
Yeah, the process is, or the process for me was, as I say, I went to university. The course I did at university was called City and Regional Planning, and that was a sort of affiliated degree to the Royal Town Planning Institute, so kind of approved course, if you will. That was a degree. I then did a diploma in it, and the diploma was a 2-year course where the first year was a year out work placement, where I worked at Lancashire County Council.
I did.
Yeah, all right.
I did my year out there. Were you Town Hall or?
No, I was East Cliff, now demolished. It's there, so right. Showing my age. So yeah, I did a great year out there. I love that year, really good. And then back for a year of study. And then after that, I think I had to do 2 years of work, keeping a log. And then it was a submission of a case, basically, with the support of your employer at the time.
And all the while feeling you made the right choice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite, and I look back on that, and it is quite sort of, I love my job. I love my career, profession, I should say. And I've always enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the degree, and yeah, I've never sort of looked back, really. And I think some of that's grounded in terms of actually my journey to become chartered. The first job I had after university was in a small district council in Leicestershire called Blaby. And I worked, I think the first thing I did was I worked in every area of planning. So I worked in enforcement, I worked in development control as it was then, and I worked in planning policy. My first week in enforcement, I got chased we had to go and serve notice on an illegal scrapyard, and I got chased by big blokes with monkey wrenches, which was an interesting start to the first week in that. So I wasn't particularly keen on enforcement. And anyway, I ended up working in the planning policy team, and that was great because it was a really small planning policy team, and there was a great combination there of having an inspirational and fantastic boss with a guy called Gary Clark, who really was an inspiration and really supportive, and I think you learn a lot from leaders like that, like he was, and it was also small enough to be involved in very diverse areas of planning policy, from sort of affordable housing to sort of housing growth, and all aspects of plan making, really, and I really enjoyed that. And I was involved in a couple of public inquiries as well at an early age, where I had to sort of defend what I was doing, and that sort of relying on evidence base and the importance of evidence base was really key. So, and I suppose the last point on that will be around the politics. Understanding local government and the way politics work. I think planning and politics are so absolutely interlinked that was a really good grounding in that. So, and then that was naturally a great platform to get my chartership.
Just interesting point about great leadership, and my view of you being yourself, authentic, down to earth, was the guy that you saw as a good leader?
What I learnt from him was sort of the importance of attention to detail a lot, and the sort of quasi-legal nature of planning. And this probably sounds like not the most inspirational thing to say, but in its own way, it really was at that point in my career where you're learning, and I learnt a lot through that. But in terms of, I think in terms of, I've worked with many great sort of bosses, and I think everyone has their own style, and I think that style's quite authentic, and I think, you know, there's many ways to get from A to B, aren't there? And you've got to find your own way and the best way of doing that. And some people like a formal way of doing it, and I'm much more informal, and it's, touch wood, so far work for me.
When I think of differentiator between yourself and other people in similar roles, and if I'm chatting to somebody and your name crops up, tends to be within that sentence, Homes England, the ex-Homes England guys. So can you tell us a bit about, you know, I know you understand you work at Homes England, what do they aim to achieve, and ultimately, you know, how you ended up there from, you know, where you had been?
Yes, so I suppose a bit about Homes England first. They are the government's the housing and regeneration quango or body. It's a huge organisation, national coverage. It's the result of a merger of a lot of different organisations, actually. So for those of a certain vintage, English Partnerships, the Housing Corporation, but it also included the regional development agencies as well that were all merged. So it's quite a strange organisation in that regard, but it's an absolute critical organisation. To give you an idea of its sort of penetration into the market, I think it's something like 70% of all housing completions last year in the Northwest had some form of money from Homes England in them. So a critical organisation, sometimes unnoticed, I would say, but what they do critically is around they own land. So it was the former Newtown Corporation. So for me, that was one of the reasons why I originally joined. And I'll come back to that, around affordable homes programme money. So the money that helps support social housing in this country, which you'll obviously be very familiar with. And then finally, other elements of investment as well. So that can be sort of grant or loan fund money to unlock predominantly residential development and sort of residential development sites. So a great organisation to work for. I absolutely loved it. I did 10 years there, and the last job I had there, I was head of land for the northwest of England, where I was involved in the buying and selling of the estate, of the land estate, and also led on a number of big key programmes, including the Garden Village programme and the Housing Infrastructure programme. So great, loved it. It was really interesting to be so close to government and understanding government policy, and I found that really fascinating earlier on, less so later on with the number of sort of political, how would I describe it? One political initiative too many, I think, in the end, but it was a great place to work. And again, talking of leadership and great bosses, the regional director while I was working there was a lady called Deborah McLaughlin, and she was an exceptional leader and someone, again, who I learnt a lot off. I really did, on multiple fronts, but she was a great leader and she got things done. So it was a great time, you know, really, really, really enjoyed it. But as I say, after 10 years, it was one political initiative. I think it was the Starter Homes initiative, which everyone will have forgotten, but it was one of these sort of crackpot sort of initiatives dreamt up by probably the housing minister over a pint, you know, on a Saturday afternoon, and you know, it was never going to work. But it was a political gimmick, but I wouldn't, you know, want that to detract from the overall picture, which is a wonderful organisation.
And was there ever a time where you could have seen you having your whole career there?
Yeah, I think there was, and I think I'd reached that point where it was a bit of a crossroads. Really, I think that. There was talk of that at the time, and I certainly could have stayed, but I think I'd reached a point where I'd been working with my now business partner for a long time, Mark Vaughan, who's a brilliant surveyor, and we worked really well together at Homes England. And I think that we became good pals, and I think there was a combination of us two working very closely together and doing things that were a little bit different, and then also getting slightly frustrated with some of the sort of politics as well. So that's really where the whole idea and concept of Hive came from, really.
Correct.
So, I mean, and at the time when we set Hive up, many people took me to one side, people I'd known a long time, and said I was completely bonkers for doing it. You know, why take the risk? Got a great pension, great salary, big team, you know, and all that. But when you get the bug, don't you? And you want to do it.
So Hive Land and Planning is the business. So the planning bit I get, the land bit.
Yeah.
What? Tell us about that, please.
Yeah. So I suppose there's three or four core functions that we offer at Hive. One is planning consultancy, as you touched on. The other one is around regeneration. We do a lot of regeneration work in its broadest form, mainly working with local authorities, but not exclusively. We do a lot of work around public sector infrastructure grant funding programs, where we've had a real success around that and done a lot of work on that, which I think is essential to unlock a lot of sites. And then we do what we call sort of core site de-risking work. So again, a lot of public sector clients that we've got own land, and they often don't have the capacity or necessarily the sort of expertise to really to do what they want to do with that site. And that might be a quick sale, or it might be an investment into the sort of de-risking of that site before disposal, or it may mean putting in infrastructure, and we've got the expertise and skills to guide those clients through that.
So does yourself and Mark's background at Homes England give you a particular leg up when working with these councils, etc.?
Absolutely. I suppose there's two elements to that. One is the network and the relationships that we obviously built, because Mark was there 10 years as well. So the relationship and network we've got sort of nationally actually has been really helpful. And sort of off the back of that, we've got a lot of ins with obviously without across the network. So there's the relationship side, but then there's also the sort of technical expertise side, which, you know, we actually bought land and we sold land, and I think through doing that is one thing talking about and trying to advise on it, but when you've actually done it and been through that and sort of disposed of the number of sites that we did, then there's a wealth of expertise that comes with that, which is, you know, obviously clients like.
I wonder whether from a client's perspective there's that, obviously the credibility there, and a bit more trust possibly, because you've come from a different background than just I'm a consultant and I've always been a consultant and I want to use, you to use our services.
I think that's absolutely right. Definitely. I couldn't agree more with that. There is an element of trust there through, and I think, you know, we were at Homes England for a long time as well. And then before that I'd worked as a planning consultant, but I'd also worked in regional development agencies and local government. So there is that public sector sort of core background that definitely helps with trust and with credibility as well.
So I know we chatted earlier, my hometown, you're involved in Preston, and Preston's on the cusp of great things, we understand. What has been your biggest, or projects you've enjoyed? I don't know, maybe saying one particular thing you've enjoyed better, but, challenges or great projects you've been involved in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on a range of great projects now. I mean, it probably sounds sickening to some people, but I really do get up in the morning with a bit of a spring in my step. I've always been that way. I'm a real optimist, and the projects we're on at the moment are great. We've just been instructed by Peterborough Council to very much along with the site de-risking. So they've got a large allocated stalled residential site. And they brought us in to sort of project manage that whole process, from establishing what the council's objectives are, working with a neighbouring landowner and doing a deal and a collaboration agreement around that, writing the briefs and procuring a multidisciplinary team to do the desktop de-risking that we need to do. So that's to get planning consent and the suite of technical documents which will demonstrate that the site's deliverable, and then the marketing process and the eventual disposal. So that for us is a cracking piece of work that we're really enjoying. I've also recently worked on a Homes England instruction around the advising the agency on how to extricate themselves from a 10-year city deal, so a devolution deal in Telford. And I've really enjoyed working on that. Quite neat, very niche. But obviously with my background, I've got quite a lot of expertise around that. And that's been working with Homes England. That's been a great job as well. And then we're also working on Eckersley Mill with the Heating Group. Iconic site next to Wigan Pier. Huge brownfield, one of the biggest brownfield sites in single ownership in GM. Very challenging site, listed buildings. And Hive have come in on that instruction to assist the Heating Group really with the work they're doing with the public sector, particularly around working with the council, but also around funding. So we successfully secured 1.8 million pounds rather of grant funding into the first phase of the site, which obviously we're really, really pleased about, and it's a great job. In terms of sort of more broader, what am I proud of? You said one thing, I'm going to be greedy and go, great, but I'll be quick. But no, I went out and it was great. It prompted me to sort of think about this coming to this session today. But I suppose there's three things really that I'm really, really proud of. When we were at Homes England, we unlocked thousands of homes worth of sites across central Lancashire and beyond that had been dormant for years, and working with Mark together, we drove that forward, and I'm immensely proud of that. We really did it. We achieved record housing completions for the government and for a government agency, which we were really pleased about. And then we were also able to be part of the Preston and Lancashire City deal, which was a localised devolution deal that I was heavily involved with. And through that, it's a bit naughty saying this, but through that we were able to, instead of the money going back to the Treasury from Homes England, we were actually able to sort of get that money into central Lancashire to fund infrastructure. So very, very pleased with that, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then a couple of other things. Whilst at Hive, we've been going just over 5 years now, and we've secured about £310 million of grant fund infrastructure money to unlock residential development, and I'm really, really proud about that. It's a good number, that.
Tremendous, yeah.
And naturally very pleased. And then last but not least, and I am being greedy on this question, but I've been heavily involved in the Preston City Living Strategy, working with the City Council on driving forward their sort of town centre regeneration, residential-led project. And I spent years working on that. I won't go into the detail of all that because we haven't got time today, but it's a cracking project and I'm immensely proud of it. And we actually won the National Royal Town Planning Institute Award for that project. It's called the Silver Jubilee Cup. And I never thought we'd win that in a million years on it, but it just shows, where these sort of projects can end up. And it's really pleasing to see that, development starting to happen in Preston, particularly residential new build. So yeah, very pleased about that as well.
You mentioned it's more challenging to develop brownfield sites in the north. So why is that?
It's basic economics. At the end of the day, it's about end values of development. So if you've got a complex site in a northern, a sub-regional northern town, you've got to bring that forward. If you were doing something in the centre of Manchester, right, the build costs are going to be the same as if you were building in any other sort of Greater Manchester town on the periphery, okay?
But then value wouldn't be the same.
Absolutely that.
Yeah.
Absolutely that. And I think that, that's the fundamentals of it. And that's been further exacerbated by rising costs for development. So it's a real challenge, but, that I go back to the importance of the Homes England Brownfield Land Fund as being a potential source to address and provide gap funding to unlock some of those developments.
Excellent. So you mentioned Telford, Peterborough, Preston. So Telford and Peterborough, bit of a surprise. Are northern towns facing the same problems as southern towns, or what you're seeing nationally there?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of garden village and new settlement work as well at Hive on the sort of development consultancy side. So, there's only, I think, there's only a limited number of garden villages nationally. We're instructed in every garden village in the northwest.
Tell us what's a garden village.
So a garden village, it was a government initiative to drive forward large new settlements, and it was badged under the Garden Village programme. So local authority areas where they were having new settlement and new growth had the ability to sort of bid in and get one of their settlements earmarked as a garden village. That's happened, and there's a number of them allocated across England. And they're great projects to be working on, vast scales. We're instructed on St Cuthbert's in Carlisle, which is 10,000 new homes. And we've done a lot of work around those. So if you're talking about something like garden villages, then I would say it is the same. They're the same issues up and down the land. If we're talking about the de-risking of sites, again, it's the sort of same issues up and down the land. I think where the challenges come in are more around sort of brownfield development, I would say. And there are real challenges about sort of the delivery of brownfield land in the North and the Midlands, where I think different strategies are required.
Okay, interesting. So you still enjoy your job, spring out of bed in the morning, helping the councils, etc. But you're also a business owner with the challenges that brings. So what are the challenges you're facing in the business at the minute? And again, that's, I guess, a look at the wider built environment.
Yeah, I think from a business perspective, we relatively recently moved into a new office. So absolutely delighted about that and really pleased. So that's been a big thing we've had our attention on as a business. So we've grown. We're up to there's 8 of us now, and also working with some freelancers. So it's gone really well. I'm immensely proud of that. But no sitting back or slouching. He says slouches. So no sitting back, and that leads me on to the biggest challenge we've got, which is a familiar one, which is recruitment. We could definitely grow, but in terms of our business development activities, we sometimes have to hold back just because we can't get the people. We're about to go out on a recruitment drive again, to try and get the right people. But I think, and I sense that's across the built environment.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree.
And so it's a real challenge, and it's just something we sort of have to work through. But it's difficult.
I mean, if anybody's listening, I think your type of work, the team you have, your office, the location would be an amazing place to get, have your career.
Well, it's very kind of you to say that. Yeah, I'd say the same about Anderson Gable, of course.
Our free
yeah. But no, I think it's also a little on. Yeah, and what we do on the planning side is planning consultancy offer, so people sort of know what that is. Albeit it's very challenging. I'll come on to that about sort of industry challenges or market challenges, should I say. But from the sort of stuff that sort of we do on the development consultancy side, it is quite niche. Some of it is a little bit niche, and especially on the regeneration and garden village work. So to that end, it does make it a little bit more difficult. So, but anyway, we'll work through. But in terms of, you asked about the sort of market and where things are and the biggest challenges we face across the business that we do, I think the 2 biggest problems at the moment are planning and the planning system, and also around sort of deliverability and viability. And they're the big challenges. Planning is often cited as a sort of barrier to economic development, and I've always defended the system against that for throughout my career. But of late, it really has got very, very difficult. The government changes, or botched changes, you might say, haven't helped. The abandoning of the national housing target has had real implications around the progression of local plans, with many local plans being abandoned. You've got nutrient neutrality, which is holding up lots of new residential development. Lots of decisions going to committee where politicians are overturning perfectly good planning applications, albeit that's within their gift, of course. But so planning is really, really challenging at the moment. And the other one it goes back to what we talked about before, and that's around viability. With better than anyone, the cost escalations of building costs. Broader state of lending and the market and everything else, it's really difficult to make some of these challenging, particularly brownfield sites, actually stack up. And therefore, there is a continued need for government intervention to support those sort of projects.
And what are your thoughts around the future for Hive? What do you want to do with Hive?
We want to grow. We want to grow.
And it sounds like from where you're working, brilliant hub here in Manchester.
Yeah.
Brilliant access to the northwest, but picking up work nationally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that we sat down on sort of day one and had a very clear plan. I think we weren't in that space. We were very, I suppose, like quite modest and humble, really. And, we got those first couple of clients that wanted to work with us, and that was a real buzz. And then, so we've grown incrementally. And I think now we've got a little bit more of a foothold on who we are and what we're doing. It's a good platform for sort of being able to plan more around growth. And that's what we're trying to do. But I think that continuing in the way that we have done around growth is what we're all, what are sort of the director of the business. So that's Justin Cove, who leads on the planning side, Mark Vaughan, who I've already mentioned, and myself. That's where we want to go, working with it. We've got a great team. We really have got a great team. And just keen to do more of what we're doing already.
Good stuff. So we like to have an educational slant on this. So obviously difficulties with recruitment, difficulties, I guess, with people coming into the industry. So what advice would you give for somebody who says, yeah, I like the sound of this, I want to be a town planner and do what you do?
Yeah, it's quite a tricky one, that, in a way. And it really got me thinking. But I suppose my advice, I would definitely encourage someone to go into the profession. That would be the first thing. I think it's a really exciting and rewarding profession, speaking personally.
I think it sounds absolutely so. I mean, every time I speak to town planners, I think to have an impact on a whole area is phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's schemes that I planned and have been involved with that I drive past that I see. They're not all good. Sometimes, but there are a lot that are, and I think the key thing for me is around providing new housing. I mean, housing growth is so important. It's so important to the economy. People have the basic right of a decent home, and for me, that's a massive driver in what I do. So, at Hive, we're more around the delivery rather than the design, I would say, and being involved in projects where we're genuinely unlocking development to provide new homes, whether it's in a regeneration area or a suburb or wherever it may be. I think so important, and I'm really sort of it's a real driver for me about housing growth, and often it's hard. We have a lot of NIMBYs out there, a lot of people that are opposed to sort of development. So we've got to keep fighting the battle, really, because people, the housing supply is in a chronic state. Really low housing completions. But back to your question, what would I advise? People definitely go into the profession. For me, looking back, that grounding in local government was really good. He gave me a really good overview of planning and the planning system and the political side of it. So I think that's solid. And I did a good long stint there as well of about 5 years. So I definitely advocate a good, solid grounding. It doesn't have to be in local government, but to build up your expertise, your core expertise around what you do, I think is really important, rather than jumping from sort of one. There's a lot of temptation with pay rises and with people promising you the earth, whereas actually sometimes you're better knuckling down and just doing a good stint to really get that under the skin of the profession that you're going into. And the other reflection I'd have is around once you're into your career. When I joined Homes England, I was a planner. I came from planning consultancy, and then there was a restructure and there was an opportunity to go into a more broader role. So rather than just doing planning, doing land, and it took a couple of people to sort of tap me on the shoulder and say, you should really give that a go. And I was very nervous about, because you've got your comfort blanket of your profession, haven't you? But I leapt at that, and that's really how I got into land and sort of doing what I'm doing now, which, truth be told, is very little planning. I'll leave that to the expert of Justin and the rest of the team to do that. So yeah, don't be afraid of a sort of career change midway, because that certainly worked well for me.
Just something you touched on there that reminded me that probably the most satisfying part of my career was urban regeneration. and group repair schemes, European funding, towns like Blackburn, I worked in Blackburn, Wigan, Blackpool, etc. Can you touch on for us, Homes England now, it was at one point, I think, funding for new homes. Now there's an aspect for regeneration, am I right?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of recent announcements at Homes England that have been really important for that area. One is around what we call sort of estate regeneration. So Homes England, in terms of their affordable homes programme, could only ever put that into new build. It had to be a new build property. Now, this is my core area of expertise, I hasten to add, so I hope I get this right, but they've introduced new flexibilities that basically allows it to be spent on sort of refurbishments. And
that seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a massive thing for the north. I mean, at the end of the day, new build's a very small proportion of the overall housing stock, isn't it? So
yes, yeah.
We've got, and so I know we do quite a bit of work with the Northern Housing Consortium, and they've been really sort of trying to promote that for a long, long time. So those new flexibilities on the funding side are really welcome. And then the other recent announcement that's been made by Homes England is called the Brownfield Infrastructure and Land Programme. And again, that's sort of really around providing grant, loan and equity funding into unlocking brownfield sites, addressing that sort of viability challenge that I mentioned before. And it's a really exciting programme, and that's open now for local authorities to bid into. So, yeah, having been quite a real limited amount of funding available over in the not too recent past, all of a sudden now there are some, really interesting programmes out there.
What do you think are the biggest challenges are facing northern towns, obviously towns where we grew up, Preston, Chorley, Blackpool, Blackburn, etc.?
Well, I mean, many people, cleverer people than me, I hasten to add, have sort of defined, they've defined this problem as sort of one of the biggest issues we are facing, really. We all spend our time in these places, and we see a lot of them are, have sadly declined significantly over the decades. A lot of our town centres were sort of given over to the preponderance of retail in the sort of 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and we've got a problem now. We've got a serious problem about what you do in those towns. And a lot of people then say, oh, and of course what we need to do is bring residential development in, because that's where the demand is, and that's absolutely right. But it kind of underscores really underplays rather, how hard that is to do, what that actually takes. And for me, I think there's a couple of comments I'd say around it, really. Firstly, it needs serious government sector intervention to enable this to happen. To fund, that everything's going to have a serious viability challenge. Anything of scale around any town centre across the north, if it's happening with a local authority leading that, and often taking a lot of the risk themselves, be typically financial, or putting finances into it to make it happen. It's really challenging. I think we need a national government strategy. Government have been really good in terms of a lot of funding sources that have been available, Levelling Up Fund, Towns Fund, and other strategies, but they're other funding programs, but they're competitive, and you never quite, if you're a local authority bidding in, you never know whether you're going to win one or not. So I think something more clear, and I'm afraid it is going to cost a lot of money to do that, and it needs big government solutions. I'm not always a big fan of big government solutions, but I think when it comes to this quandary, it really is needed. That said, there are places that have, and you're going to laugh at this, what I'm going to talk about, the centre of the universe, Chorley. So, to be fair to Chorley, I can see,
we're going to talk about this point here.
Yeah, right. I think that Chorley Council, all credit to them, they've done a fantastic job in terms of investing in the town. So at the outset, when no one else was going to invest in Chorley, the council had done that. That's been quite controversial. Lots of people don't think it's the role of a local authority to be sort of on the front foot doing that, buying the shopping centre, etc. But Chorley Council have done it. They put a lot of public realm works. They bought the shopping centre, and they've done a lot to drive that market confidence. And that's exactly what's happened. And if you go to Chorley, it's a vibrant town. They've done really well in the nighttime economy. They've got lots of micro bars that have set up. There's an interesting food offer now that there never used to be. So it does prove that and I think that, latching on to what people want in this day and age, which is nice coffee, whether we, all the, nice coffee, nice food, or, and independent shops, which again appeal to a lot of people. As an economy, central Lancashire, it's a good economy, wider, but a lot of the centres within there aren't catering for the people that live there. And I think Chorley started to sort of move into that space. And of course, it helps when you've got an M&S food and a booths.
You're aware that I shop in Chorley.
And you are.
And
you do.
Something that I think, tiny thing, but impactful thing, free parking.
Yeah.
For a period of time.
Yeah.
So you can park up, dip out, go and do your shopping, back to the car. Fantastic.
Yeah, and that's something else the council absolutely led on. Again, it was quite controversial at the time. I think they did make these bold decisions. So I think when you have Chorley got the ingredients together really to sort of make it happen. But there's a lot of other towns out there that are really, really struggling.
We always finish with 3 quick-fire questions.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about you love your career, you enjoy your career as a town planner and, wider offering now with regard to land regeneration. What would you have done if you hadn't been a town planner?
Well, my dad was a bank manager and my mum was a teacher, neither of which appealed to me in the slightest, but my granddad was a farmer. And
that's good.
I have early memories of being on the farm in Parbold where it was a pig and chicken farm. So fond memories of that. I'd love to have been a farmer. And the exposure I get to that at this moment in time is we have a few chickens at home, or bantams, should I say. So, that's about as far as it goes. But yeah, I'd love to have been a farmer, I think.
Yeah, great job, isn't it? No emails. What book are you currently reading? Or if you're not, what books have you enjoyed, etc.?
Probably my favourite book is a book called Child of the Revolution by...
Oh, you've gone intelligent on me.
Well, it sounds highbrow. It's by a guy called Wolfgang Leonhard, and it is a brilliant, true story about a young lad who grew up in Sweden with his mother, in Germany, with his mother who was a communist in the 1930s.
What's the title again, sorry?
Child of the Revolution.
Right.
And they had to flee Germany. First of all, they went to Sweden, and then they went to Moscow. So they hit Moscow right when the purges were on under Stalin, and it's about his life. His mother was sent off to a Siberian gulag. He was put in a school where he was basically indoctrinated, as you would imagine, and it's an unbelievable true story. And in the end, he fled to Yugoslavia. And it's a great book. So it might sound highbrow, but it's about life, determination, politics, and yeah. So great book.
Didn't expect that.
Great book.
Good effort. If you had an extra hour in the day, what would you do with it?
Well, I've got to say family, haven't I? Everyone says that, but no, I love my wife and daughter. Love nothing more than going for a walk up Rivington, as you'd expect. So I really like that. Other things. Watching my beloved Wigan Athletic wherever they play. I could never spend enough time doing that. And I suppose the last one for me is I love art. I'm a big fan of art. And again, bringing it back to Chorley, centre of the universe.
Free parking.
Indeed. Is Sir Henry Tate was from Chorley. Not a lot of people know that. And I think it's absolutely shocking that other than a blue plaque, the only thing we've got in Chorley about Henry Tate is the name of the Wetherspoons pub, which is shocking. And I think there should be a gallery in Chorley, a satellite gallery. You look what they've done in Wakefield for Barbara Hepworth, where she was from.
Preston, Wallace and Gromit.
Absolutely. But I think, the idea of being involved in something around lobbying the Tate Gallery to get something in Chorley that the people of Chorley can sort of celebrate and see, I think would be a great thing. So who knows, one day I might try and get that mobilised and do something about it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you'll succeed. Yeah. Well, that's been a fantastic discussion. Learnt loads, and thanks for your time.
Oh, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.
Good.